Okay, so it says we're live now.
Alrighty.
Uh,
And away we go.
yes, we are. Okay, so just wanted to check. Hello, Legion of Doom. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, second podcast, another podcast within 2 days. That's
Hmm.
cool. This is kind of a revision of what I tried to do last week. Um, Mostly, I'm doing this now because I have Dalton with me, who is you majored or minored in philosophy.
I majored.
Yeah, he majored in philosophy. So I think it'll be better for the philosophical stuff of
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed.
And for the record, despite the fact that I was only in college for 3 years, I independently studied philosophy many years before then. So I know my shit in
Yeah,
regards
so
to
he knows what to do. So mainly we are talking. So we're going to be talking about like the games and like the philosophy and maybe some of the themes. I will go a little bit into my kind of rewrite of the Assassin's Creed movie
philosophy.
and stuff. Some things. Uh, Again, Dawn's here to like kind of both help and like just chat it up.
Yeah.
Also, he might be leaving, so all depends.
It depends on how long we go for, because I promised Team that if he ever needed a judge for Thunderdome, he could call me,
Yeah.
and he's
Uh,
been putting off Thunderdome for the last 2 weeks. So
Personally, I think maybe just at least a good hour, hour and a half.
yeah.
Okay. So let's start with let's start with the philosophies, I guess, of like the assassins and the Knights Templar. Which one do you want to start with first, Dalton?
Let's start with the Templars, because interestingly enough, I actually have a pretty decent background knowledge on the actual Templars. I'm curious how the games sort of tweak them.
That is actually really, again, those are really interesting because you actually in the games you've actually been able to play the Templars like twice. One in like the first half of Assassin's Creed 3, and like they devoted a whole game to being a Templar.
Hmm.
I mean, granted, those games were still shit on various levels, but
Yeah.
still interesting though. Okay. Well, a little background on the Templar Order of the Assassin's Creed universe, like in the lore.
Yeah.
Originally, it wasn't called the Templar Order because the Templar Order only rose from the Crusades.
Right.
But it existed as the Order of the Ancients.
Hmm.
That's what it was called. I think it's existed since little past Greek, maybe a little longer, like ancient Greece.
Ah.
So within like the good 10,000 years before before 1 AD or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, the primary belief is that they think humanity is simply too destructive and inherently volatile. I actually have the analogy I use is like a stick of dynamite with a very long fuse that was lit since the conception of man, and one day it will blow and chaos will reign.
Hmm.
Needing to add uh, um,
Um, interestingly, the actual historical Templars are are known for quite a few conspiracy theories in their own right, because during the Crusades they were the holy order that was assigned by the Pope to look after Jerusalem. They were sort of the SEAL Team 6 of the Crusades, and they would stall their horses and reside in the ruins of what was then King Solomon's Temple. or the remains of what was King Solomon's temple. They're said to have found documents there. And then after the Crusades, they became obscenely wealthy because of various favors they were owed by various church officials and also heads of state. There are several conspiracy theories that what they found there, what they found in the ruins of the temple, was knowledge that was dangerous enough that they were able to actually blackmail the church with it. There's some theories that suggest they have the philosophies contained therein became the roots of things like Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry. There's policies that suggest maybe it was geometric and architectural knowledge, and that's why the production of things like cathedrals went up post the Crusades. There's a lot of that. So it is interesting to me that they would pick the Templars out of anything, because if you wanted to pick a very romantic and interesting if you wanted to pick a very murky and fascinating bit of history to base your game off of, you honestly couldn't go wrong with the Knights Templar.
Yeah, so in the game, like, they kind of seek to cull the nature the nature of humanity being kind of like violent and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I would say they're kind of cynical when it comes to humanity.
Yeah, they appear to be very cynical when it comes to human nature. Humans are just animals, and if we leave them to their own devices, they'll do awful shit.
Yeah.
So somebody needs to be in charge, and of course that needs to be us, because we're the one exception to human nature, don't you know? Herp derp derp. It kind of reminds me of some of our sphere of influence here with the SJWs versus the anti-SJWs.
Yeah. So they want, absolute control, obviously, which is very, I would say, kind of authoritarian, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is that the assassins in the games, they are the outcasts, while the Templars are kind of the ones on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I'm really seeing some parallels now.
Which is very interesting to me, because in the actual history of the Order of the Knights Templar, they were butchered in 1307 on October 13th, which was a Friday, by someone who someone who owed them a substantial amount of money. That was the other thing. The Templars were one of the only organizations that was ordained by the church to engage in what we would today call banking practices, which was for the most part forbidden among Christians of the time.
That explains the. I think we talked about this once with like the Jews.
Yeah, the Jews and non-Christians being sort of put in banking roles because it was considered sinful for Christians to do things like charge interest or money lend.
Yeah, I'm realizing.
You could do like money lending for services and things, but you couldn't manipulate money or work with money for money's sake, basically.
Yeah, I'm realizing something about Christianity. I don't want to say it. Christianity was kind of fucked up, and kind of still is.
Well, to be fair, every religion at some point or other was fucked up.
True. That is true, actually.
The Romans fed Christians to lions. Islam is pretty much Islam, and the Christians did the burning times and the Inquisitions and all that horrible shit. So
yeah,
everybody's awful. Maybe the Templars do have a point.
Yeah. Okay. So the Templars themselves don't actually support a single ruler or empire, but they do. Like I said, they support ideals of authoritarianism and by suppressing free will and thinking.
Yeah, which is again very ironic because, like I said, the Templars are thought to have brought a lot of Middle Eastern knowledge back with them when they returned from the Crusades, perhaps sparking the beginnings of what we would call the Renaissance or the Enlightenment ideals.
That is interesting. Um, so, kind of as a example, I wrote down Hathan Kenway, who is like a protagonist slash antagonist of Assassin's Creed 3. He talks about freedom. And Assassin's Creed 3 was set during the American Revolution,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit before and also during. So he says freedom is an invitation for chaos. I kind of think it is true to an extent. For if beings like us, humans, were given free range with no limitation, then the world would be nothing but a land of carnage and destruction. And I said,
Right, but the thing that both the Templars and actual authoritarian regimes, within the Assassin's Creed universe and also in actuality, don't understand is at least in my opinion, the supremacy of rational argument. Yes, if you view humans as these unreasonable, irrational things, you're going to get chaos because if you treat people like animals, surprise, they act like animals. But if you instill in people the worth of rational argument and having understandable reasons for things and the responsibilities that come with things like freedom and power, then they will use it accordingly. Maybe I'm a little bit idealist, but I side with Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin in this argument. I think the best thing you can do is encourage individuals to refine themselves and become the best versions of themselves. And if
yeah,
you can manage to encourage that, then you will thereby make society overall better.
right. Well, what I was saying, I was going to say, there lies the fundamental problem with the Templars. They lack the faith that the people can change and be better, deciding that they know what's best for the people, like many tyrannical parties of centuries past.
Yeah, there's a famous line. I think it's from the Giver movie. I don't think it was in the book. It was said by Meryl Streep's character, which was when people have the freedom to choose, they choose wrong. And my, of course, retort to that is, did you try reasoning with them? You might have had better luck if you actually, explained why you wanted the things you want, rather than just
Yeah.
assuming that nobody could get it.
So, yeah. Unlike the Assassin Brotherhood, again, we're still talking about in game because I think if we try to because I'm
Well,
not.
I mean, there are interesting parallels to the game and sort of the world's to the game and the real world, so it's kind of interesting to sort of look at it from both angles.
Right, right. But yeah, the Brotherhood who give the individual the right to choose to be part of the Brotherhood or to live an ordinary life. It's the exact opposite of the Templars who impose their ideology onto many to join when they know of the Assassin Templar War. Trying to do so is death of the individual who, by irony, joins the collective of the order and becomes a face in a large sea of faces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, once part of, again, I'm kind of reading the essay I had wrote, um, here. So I say once, I'm
It's
sorry.
fine. Go ahead.
All right, wait, was something gonna add?
No, I was just saying it's fine if you read the thing you already had written up.
Yeah. Once part of the Templar Order, one is meant to serve dutifully, and without question. Failure to do so is death. Um, actually, I think that's kind of like major part. I go into like the kind of pledge that one takes as they're sworn into the Templar Order, but I'm not sure we're at that point yet.
Hmm.
Talk about it.
Which again, all of this is extremely ironic to me when you consider how ahead of their time the Templar Order was in terms of things like individualism and fraternity. Um, there was always a notion of, you know, your fellow knights being brothers in like medieval warfare, as there is in, modern warfare, and as there has been in pretty much every war since the beginning of fucking time. But the Templar order really insisted upon sort of the individual leeway or leverage of each knight in particular. And yes, they all served sort of a grand master uh Templar. It was sort of like a hierarchy or a organization,
Well,
but
yeah, I mean, like in any organization, you have to have a leader.
right.
So,
But the Templar Order, unless I'm misremembering, originally elected the head of their order by both merit, i.e., only knights who had attained a certain level were eligible for the position, and also by voting. So it's uh, if I were an actual Templar, I would kind of feel slandered by the game's portrayal of the Templar philosophy here.
yeah,
But
I
they
would.
they need they needed a villain, and like I said, the Templars are very interesting. So
Well, I would say because okay, so technically in the games, the history that we know is the history the normal people, or the populace know. And that's
mhm.
because of the tinkering and stuff from the Templars, because because the victors write the
Yeah, they meddled. To the victors go the
spoil.
spoils and the ability to write history.
Yeah, winners write the history books.
Yeah.
So, in all intents and purposes, you know the Templars portrayed themselves as the heroes while defacing the Assassin Brotherhood in the games. Now, so but again, it's an interesting parallel because in real world, the Templars themselves were actually good guys. I would say they had gray spots like anything else, morally gray.
I
Um,
I mean they were still fanatical holy warriors, so that there's that. I don't I think they would probably put quite a few evangelicals even today to shame, but they were the beginning of what you might call Western liberalism from everything that we know.
yeah. Um, uh, uh, but yeah, I was just saying, like, it seems like there's an interesting parallel between real world and game lore. You know.
Mhm.
Um, well, the Templars do.
And of course, like I said, the Templars feature heavily in a lot of conspiracy theories. There are certain people that say that the Templars were the beginnings of something called the Illuminati, and in these conspiracy theories, the Illuminati secretly runs the world, despite the fact that the actual historical organization known as the Illuminati was founded in 1776 and was disbanded in 1786, and had slightly more than 1,000 members at its peak popularity. So there's very little historical evidence for that. But
I was gonna say, wasn't the Illuminati founded like during the American Revolution?
No. Okay, so technically, yes, they were founded in 1776, but it was founded in Bavaria, so there was very little connection whatsoever to the American Revolution. It just so
Okay.
happened that those two things happened at the same time.
Okay. I don't know how I feel about it's weird. Like in the games, technically the Templars are the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Huh. The games are interesting, though. I will say that. Like they do put an interesting spin on how history can be molded and how it differs from actually being seen to.
Yeah, I give them a lot of credit for even knowing all the shit they would have to know to even reference this stuff. So
Yeah, they're fun too. It's always a good thing for games. What was I? Right. While the Templars do things that can be seen as rather evil or malevolent, uh, it is to keep in line with the moral grade nature of both secret orders. The assassins and Templars.
well, the assassins are assassins, so yeah.
Yeah. The Templars do things like burning villages or installing dictators because they see it as necessary evils to ensure humanity's cooperation. Because in the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Greater good, as most would put it.
Or the one, yada yada yada. Yeah.
Yeah. Personally, I think the greater good is kind of bullshit.
I couldn't possibly agree more. I think the best way of going about the greater good is to account for as many individual variables as you can.
Yeah.
Not to overlook variables. Like even just on a logical progression, the way you solve problems or establish parameters is by accounting for as many variables as possible. Collectivism almost does the opposite, which is the individual variables don't matter because of the overarching collective woo. And I personally would actually have it go the other way, which is the overarching collective woo is less important when you take into account the individual variable.
Right.
But what do I know? Just basic bitch logic and all, but whatever.
Yeah, you're just some guy.
No, I don't think I'm quite as charming as just some guy.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think you're pretty nifty and cool.
Hmm.
And
Well, yeah, the compliment is appreciated, but I will take that compliment when I have how many subscribers does JSG have at the moment?
keep in mind, I am one of them.
Yeah. Me too. I'm not disparaging JSG. I'm just saying I'm just running with the joke, basically, is all that's going on there. Not to say I wouldn't enjoy having what, like 40,000 subscribers now.
And how many you have?
I have 68 right now, and I'm pretty sure JSG has like 40 something. 40K something. Yeah.
48,940 subscribers.
Yeah. So he's almost at 50. He should get to 50 at some point. But I should also get to 50 at some point. But in fairness, I don't make videos as often as I should, so that's probably why.
Same here. So no, no use crying in, no use crying over spilled milk.
Or absent subscribers, as the case may be.
Yeah.
Someday, though, assuming that YouTube doesn't go completely belly up in the time it would take us to get there,
And I hope not.
which is a real possibility in this day and age, because YouTube is a fucking
Mess.
YouTube is acting a lot like the Templars, albeit back on track.
Yeah. Another part I was saying, while their goal for humanity is a noble one, that being to lead humanity to enlightenment so they can transform the world into a self-sustained progressive utopia. And keep in mind, I'm using this from the wiki of Assassin's Creed.
Right. It's not like we're pulling this out of our asses, but at the same time, just based on what you said there, remind you of anybody?
Huh. Wow, we really are. I'm really seeing so many goddamn parallels here. What does that make us? Hated ones?
I think that makes us the assassins in this instance.
Well, I do like hoodies.
Yeah, medieval style hoods are awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, their goal is. I don't dislike their goal. I think it's one that we should really strive for. But
at the same time, one wonders what they mean exactly by progressive and what ideological framework they're working with, which is very much the same problem that shall we say our Templars have here.
Maybe we should start calling them that.
No,
I feel like that would be. I feel like.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I feel like that would be insulting to the actual Templars that.
Yeah, because like I said, the Templars basically jump started the end of the Middle Ages and the beginnings of what would evolve into like the Renaissance and the scientific revolution.
Yeah, so I retract that previous statement of mine.
Yeah, because it would be too complimentary, and no one would understand that we were talking about the games, not the historical order.
Yeah. So I retract that statement. But what were you going to say to him?
I was just saying I think it might be a little bit too specific of an insult to really, because most people upon hearing Templars are going to think of the medieval order probably before they think of the games.
Maybe.
Or well, then again, there's enough people who play the games that probably had never heard of the Templars outside of the games. So maybe, but still, that kind of gives them more of a moral high ground that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah. So I think in our ideal version of a self-sustained progressive utopia is just basically a world where we don't have one where it's not like politically correct. There's no real well, how would you describe it? No.
Where people are free to express what they want to express for the reasons they want to express them, and the only standards that matter really are logic and meritocracy.
Yeah.
And
I think obviously
people's basic needs are accounted for, so that they can actually lead lives that they both find meaningful and enjoyable. I think that's my definition of a utopia. I'm not calling it a progressive utopia because that word has been tainted beyond salvageability at this point. But,
yeah, true. I guess the way I guess that's kind of the way I would describe a utopia too. But also just I think there have to be guidelines for people to follow.
Well, okay. Yeah, I'm not saying there shouldn't be. I'm not saying there shouldn't be laws. I'm just saying that things like political, ideological, and artistic expression are not prohibited in any major.
Oh yeah, obviously. I'm just saying big rule is you shouldn't kill people. obviously.
Basically, if it would have violated the Hammurabic Code, the Magna Carta, or the what do they call it? Marcus Aurelius's Way of the Warrior, or Sun Tzu's Art of War, you done fucked up. Basically,
Yeah.
is the long and the short of it.
The thing is also with the Templars, because I think they face problems that are actually very self-destructive towards their actual goal. Like, as I wrote here in my essay, I'm calling it an essay, but it's really just a script. It's like,
yeah,
it's written in an essay format, kinda, but again, it's just, I don't really feel like I should be calling it an essay because I don't really think it actually is one, but it's the only word I can really think of for it. So,
right, it's a write up basically.
It's a write up. All right. Various factors that have plagued the order since its inception. There have actually been various factions within the order that have formed, basically infighting, kind of.
Yeah.
Like moderate Templars who would try to influence humanity to have discipline and restraint, as well as opting for tighter and more centralized government control. Okay, what do you have to say to that?
I'm fine with the idea of instituting self-discipline, but the problem with self-discipline is that first part there. It has to be self-discipline, i.e., you have to actually explain to a person why they should subscribe to your particular ideology or not.
Yeah.
And that always seems to be the stumbling block, because when you provide someone with an ideology that has various flaws, you'll find that a lot of them very often start pointing out those very obvious flaws, and you find those so insulting, invalid, and downright heretical that your brain shuts off and you go into that's impossible mode.
Yeah. What about the more centralized governmental control?
Yeah, that's the part that once again kind of, and again, I'm not right leaning in any particular great degree whatsoever. I'm a birdie bro. I actually think that a scan a Scandinavian type Scandinavian type universal healthcare system, or government subsidized college would make sense. But I still do not trust the government, because the government is stocked by people with power, and while I am a firm believer in the principle of noblesse oblige, when you give someone enough power that they can skirt that, some of them are going to use that. It's the old Ring of Gyges paradox. Have you ever heard of the Ring of Gyges, Brainstorm?
I have not. Please explain.
The Ring of Gyges was a thought experiment posed by a philosopher whose name I do not remember at the time, where he basically postulated, what if a person had a magic ring that could render them invisible and would allow them to avoid consequences for their actions? What would they do with that power? Would they be benevolent and choose to use it for good,
In a way,
or
it's
would
kind of
they fuck around with people?
so. In a way, it's kind of like the idea of, power corrupts. Absolute
Yeah,
power corrupts. Kind of deal.
it's the idea that, at least to some extent, the idea that our actions are accountable to someone, or will have consequences to both us and the people that we are
Right.
working with,
So
is what
basically,
keeps us on the straight and narrow in a lot of ways.
okay. I don't know much about government to really kind of put my 2 cents into that. I do agree with like the kind of the self-taught, discipline and restraint. I think that's important to have.
And I also think that those are for the individual to define and come to on their own, which isn't to say that they can't be exposed to criticism for their beliefs insofar as their beliefs are demonstrably wrong. I am a big proponent in the idea of rational argument. I think a lot of things can be solved by simply pointing out what someone or something is doing wrong or what is wrong about something, and offering a more logical, more rational system to pull off from there.
Right. I mean, it also doesn't help that there are more fanatics of the Templars that would argue for the destruction of free will and complete control of the human race.
And therein lies the problem. Even if you start with someone who just wants to insist upon, everyone being disciplined and working efficiently and stuff, you always find that there are more complex aspects of human nature that rebel against those kind of controls. And if you try to gently nudge someone towards something and they rebel against you, and you really, really want them to go the direction you're pushing them, you push harder. And they'll resist you again, and you'll push a little bit harder.
It's kind of what Armin Zola in Captain America's Winter Soldier said. If you try to take freedom forcefully, the people will resist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's a fundamental aspect of human nature, but it's also what in philosophical terms we refer to as a reductio ad absurdum, which basically says that if you propose a premise, you should take that premise as far as would be logically necessary. So if you start from the premise of force is acceptable to use for political ends, you take that premise to its logical conclusion, and you wind up with dead people, because if people won't listen to your suggestions under any forceful circumstances, what are you left to do but kill them?
Yeah.
And therein lies the problem.
A thing that kind of contradicts the Templars is that in their goals, when powerful members of the Order abuse the power for their own use and avarice, because that's actually happened various times throughout the game series, early ones mostly.
Yeah, as you can imagine, and I'm not really surprised by that.
Yeah. Which does prove the pessimistic. I'm using that word right?
Yeah.
Pessimistic viewpoint of the Templars on humanity, that they are vicious animals at heart, and Templars insist that freedom, with air quotes, is cause for chaos, ultimately threatening civilization itself.
But see, this is the fundamental irony of it. The people who you have to look out for the most are the people saying shit like that. The people who are just out for freedom generally are just out for freedom and don't give a fuck. But the people who say that human nature is icky, ironically, have themselves the most icky natures. It's kind of like the paradox of the male feminist. They will claim the validity of concepts like toxic masculinity, not because it applies to all men, but because it applies specifically to them, and they can excuse themselves if they say it's not me in particular that's wrong, it's just that all masculinity results in this kind of toxicity when you mishandle it.
Right. Okay. So since we've talked a little bit about the games and stuff, mostly not the games themselves, I am going to be posting a few videos throughout this. First one is called "What Made Assassin's Creed Good," because I would argue the fact that Assassin's Creed has kind of lost its way so far.
Yeah.
Since like
It
I would say since 2012 or 13. No,
Yeah, I'd agree with that timeline pretty much. I
yeah,
did like Black Flag. Black Flag was the last one that I liked.
I liked that just on the fact that it was well, it had pirates, and I was a big fan of pirates at the time.
Hmm. Did you ever see
So
the parody video where the main character from Assassin's Creed Black Flag meets Jack Sparrow?
I believe I did. Yes.
It was a musical.
Oh no, then no. I saw one
Uh,
where they fought.
I'll have to send it to you. Give me a second.
Okay, so since we've talked a little bit about the Templars, let's kind of move on to the titular.
Assassins.
Yeah, and I think I wrote for more about them than I did with the um, Templars.
Well, they are the main characters, so why not?
True. Okay, so I guess we should start with the Assassin's Creed, right? You know, nothing is true, everything is permitted. So, Dalton, I'm sure because I was going to bring this up, and I think I was going to bring it up. I brought it up last time, but I didn't articulate it well enough. Um, what is the real world implication of nothing is true, everything is permitted from the Has Hasashir Hasashir
Hashashim.
Hasashir. Why do I keep thinking Hasashir Hasashin?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
But anyway, what were you asking? Sorry, I was reading Twitter. Pro Pixel replied to my thing. So
Right. But I was asking, what is the actual philosophy of nothing is true, everything is permitted from like the actual assassins of the Crusades?
I don't know as much about them as I do the historical. Um, I don't know as much about them as I do the historical Templars.
Okay.
Uh, I do know that they were a predominantly Muslim order, who
Uh,
were essentially thieves and assassins for hire, who would um commit acts of assassination for hire under the influence of an opium-like drug called hashish,
right. Um,
which is where they get their name from, the hashashim.
right. Well, okay. Again, I am going to link another video uh, from Wisecrack. It's like a philosophy channel. I think you might have heard of it, Dalton.
I've actually considered doing response videos to them before, but obviously that was before I had my recent bout of sleep issues, and also my friend offered to write me a theme tune. So I'm waiting for my mental faculties to be back on par, and also for my friends to give me that theme tune so I can use it as
Right.
the intro to my channel, and then I should be able to do a response video to them.
So I'm linking that video in the chat now, and it does talk a little bit about the hash has
Hashashim.
asashi.
Yes.
Right. Um. Get through that. Right. Yeah, but essentially, it's just like nothing is true. Like the whole thing is like real world implications. The whole nothing is true, everything is permitted thing is that, and it's kind of anarchist, I would guess, and cynical.
Um, Not necessarily cynical, just the idea was essentially that it was their God-given right to do to do what they wanted as long as they stayed within their specific parameters for irony, which were, because they were Muslim, mostly derived from the Quran and the Hadith.
Okay. But yeah, it's just so I will say the Hasashir
Sheem.
Sheen. God damn it! I'm gonna be doing that all the time. I know that. I know that.
Yes, you probably will, but that's okay.
Right. I'm just gonna call them assassins because that's what we know them as now.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially, in the real world implication is just they it's not what we perceive it as from the games, essentially. Obviously.
Yeah.
So, um, so I'm just going to give my interpretation of the creed, and I'm sure Dalton would, from the game, the creed from the game. And Dalton, if you want to interject with your own thoughts on what you think the creed means and stuff, please do. If anyone disagrees, let us know, and we like to debate and talk and stuff. So, okay, so beginning with the first half, nothing is true. I believe personally that it is to mean that truth isn't lies we collectively believe, but simply our own subjective perception of what we define as truth, and that we should never blindly follow something because we are told to. But we must always question and seek the truth ourselves, find all the facts, and determine ourselves what truth is by our own accords.
See, the problem with this whole nothing is true, everything is permitted philosophy, as far as I understand it, is ironically it can lead to exactly the same kind of moralizing as the Templars in this instance, if the assassins are not very careful. Because in a world where nothing is true and the only thing that decides what is true is subjectivity, then you run into the idea of, well, if everything is just subjective woo, then why don't we try to control what people believe, and therefore we can create a utopia.
Right. I get what you're saying. To to reference a quote from Ezio Auditore de Firenze in Assassin's Creed Revelations, because he does in that game he does explain the creed of the games. To say nothing is true is to realize that the foundations of society are fragile, and that we must be the shepherds of our own civilization.
Yeah, now that I agree. Now that I agree with
Right.
There's nothing so unquestionable that you should just blindly follow it or accept that things are endowed with the authority that people have decided they're granted.
Yeah, it's like I would say kind of like I can't think of I can't think of a good enough example actually. Huh. I had something, but it's not sticking. I can't think of the words, I guess. I want to say Nazi Germany, but that's a little too obvious. I don't really think that's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But, something like that, I guess. I wrote that society itself is in a constant flux of war and peace, so it is up to those who understand that we must be masters of our fates and of our own free will to follow the path of good and help others, so that inspires them to choose a similar path, even if it differs, so they too inspire others to seek a path that improves the lives of all.
Yeah, it's basically a very sort of quasi poetic way of stating individualism from what that is describing.
Yeah.
But I would be very careful with the nothing is true portion of that, because again, the reducing of all things and all meaning down to nothing but subjectivity leaves open a lot of doors that I think are best left shut.
True. Well, again, you have to think. You have to also see the irony with the assassins, is because they have tenets, rules that they follow.
Yeah.
Are taught, like stay your blade from the flesh of an innocent, hide in plain sight, and never compromise the brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Those are followed by assassins, even though their mantra is nothing is true, everything is permitted.
Yeah. Although I hope at least that they're followed because the people in question find them to be rational and not just out of authority.
Well, also, it is because, those tenets have been around since I believe, first century, because that's when the assassins were originally formed, known as the Hidden Ones.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is interesting. I think it's more of because they do. I think all of the assassins follow them out of their own free will to do so because, well, for one thing, they do make sense, and two, it's because I think the first one is morally right.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we should move on to the second half of the creed. I don't think we have much else to say about nothing is true.
Right.
Everything is permitted. Do you have anything to say to that, Don, before I do?
I think on broad general principle, I'd agree with that. Um, I think it relies upon people who wish to institute rules to make arguments for those rules. So in a vacuum, yes, everything is permissible, but obviously there are things that I would not consider permissible, like, for example, shouting fire in a crowded movie theater, or uh, well, pedophilia, or
Right, right. Yeah, it's
or
just
so on and so forth. So
so.
like
It
I
comes.
I think in if okay we if we assume that they're speaking once again in kind of general principles, and this is just a call for basically libertarianism in the lowercase l non-political sense. Yeah, I'd agree with that because
Yeah, 'cause I do think that's what they're. I think this is exactly it because I don't. Because to me, the games have never really been political.
Yeah.
My knowledge.
Yeah, no, not in any sense that mattered. I don't think. No.
Yeah, I mean it has had politics in it, but it's more of storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember when stories actually focused on stories and all elements of politics and stuff like that were supplementary.
Uh, Such a golden age it was.
Yeah, I miss those days. Okay, so yeah, so I wrote here, for me at least, it is to say that we all follow our own codes, either they be moral, religious, or law. Maybe they be divine decree or man-made. We follow something we perceive to be higher than ourselves, or words that we as people use to frame and judge our actions by. Um, Again, this can be subjective because all who live do so by dictating their perception of what is right and wrong.
Fair play.
Uh, Anything to add to that? Because
No, I think again in a very broad, universal sense, that's fair.
yeah,
I would always say that you can actually argue who is more correct in that arena. I don't subscribe to the theory that you can't argue from taste. I think everything is dependent upon logic.
yeah.
And
Um,
even if things like what you find to be tasty, or what you find to be aesthetically pleasing are a bit nebulous, the axioms you take from that and the axioms you connect that to uh still are under the purview of logic to be um judged.
Again, to quote Ezio Auditore, who was basically like the face of Assassin's Creed for a long time.
Yeah.
To say that everything is permitted is to understand that we are the architects of our actions, and that we must live with their consequences, whether glorious or tragic.
Okay, that I totally agree with.
Yeah. We are responsible for the actions we choose to do, and even if we are to reap the benefits or to suffer the consequences, we are to do so because we chose that road to travel, but we had the freedom to do that. I think when I write, I talk a little more eloquently.
Well, you have more time to sort of sort out your wording and things,
Yeah.
whereas the informal nature of speech just kind of makes it more difficult to be formal because it's not.
Well, I do have the last sentence here to say, to blame others for our mistakes by our choices are unproductive, and if we are to blame anyone, it is to be ourselves and ourselves alone.
I don't know about alone because the old saying goes, if a tree falls in the forest and you and I are both standing next to it, you'll hear three stories, yours, mine, and the trees. Which is to say that if multiple people are involved in a thing, multiple people at least share some culpability for that thing.
Okay.
So I don't know about alone. I think
Well,
as
I
many
mean by the choices we make ourselves.
yeah, that's fair. I might be being overly pedantic about it, but
I think, okay, I guess we should kind of talk about the ironies with the assassins, like we did with the Templars.
mm-hmm.
Um, the Brotherhood, the Brotherhood holds the principles, rules of the assassins, which contradicts the maxim "nothing is true, everything is permitted" kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
The tenets do seem to reflect the altruistic, while also being hypocritical nature of the Brotherhood. Um, while they are technically thought of as the good guys, they are more realistically a very morally gray organization. Uh, just like the Templars. Um, and like I wanted to bring up like the tenet of "stay your blade from the flesh of an innocent." Um, it's contradictory to the Assassin Brotherhood. It's just it's a funny irony when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So with so many contradictions within the Creed and the Assassins themselves, what makes them so much better than the Templars? That's the question that shouldn't be asked because they are not. In fact, they are very similar, with both end goals being the same: worldwide peace and prosperity. The Assassins believe that they can achieve that goal by giving humanity unrestrained freedom and knowledge. Um,
Unrestrained knowledge, yes, and unrestrained freedom, I agree with to a reasonable degree.
yeah,
Um,
I think I have more on that. The philosophies of both Templars and Assassins are both flawed and legitimate. Even though one does seem more freeing, both are right in pursuing the goal of peace. Um, I believe that there is a common ground that can be found by these two, but both orders are too stubborn to see that, perceiving the other as eternal enemies, even though in the past Assassins became Templars and Templars became Assassins, even Templars and Assassins having worked together.
we see the same problem here as we do between the Jedi and the Sith. They're two halves of a same whole that, because they separated, um, are now so far off into fanciful extremes that neither can really get anything done or be meaningfully whole in any way.
The analogy I use is that they are not they are not two opposite sides, but merely the sides of a coin. Similar but different, but still part of the same coin nonetheless.
hmm And both of them kind of it's ironic because here we have kind of the um kind of the difference between authoritarian governments and anarchy, because both miss the point of maybe we should stop somewhere in the middle where there's a functional society, but people are still free to express shit.
Right. That's actually something. So, I wrote, so I propose a merger of the philosophies. While the assassins promote freedom and the Templars opt for order, why not have the freedom of choice, but also guide those to choose a path of betterment and innovation? Instead of blindly following, why not question and abide by a strict code of ethics and compromise once one sees the importance of a deal that benefits all parties?
Yeah, again, both sides in this instance appear to have completely forgotten the importance of the rational argument. This is an argument I get into a lot with people who are more anarchistic than myself, because I would describe myself as lowercase L libertarian on those things. I do not give a fuck as long as you can logically defend what you're doing and you're not impeding anyone else's shit by what you're doing, then that's fine. But I still think there needs to be a state. A lot of people seem to believe that if you just like on one side of the argument, you have human nature is icky, let's control it so it can't be icky anymore. All on the other half, you have human nature is perfect and flawless in every way, so if we get rid of all of the limitations, humans will just naturally devolve into a utopia. And I'm sorry, but on neither of these cases am I going to be accepting, because human nature is much, much better than the authoritarians tend to think, but extenuating circumstances and unaccounted for variables are also a thing. That's why the state exists in the first place. And I do think most states justify themselves, with obvious exceptions of when they, depending upon which ideology those states adhere to.
Yeah. Um, so kind of to talk about my because I was planning on doing a rewrite of the Assassin's Creed movie, and we will talk a little bit about that later.
Mm-hmm.
But the story I had was the merger of the merger of these philosophies, of what I proposed earlier, is kind of like the end goal of the main character that must discover through their journey as an assassin. If you are to grant freedom, lead those to to it with a firm hand of guidance. Although to grant freedom is to invite chaos, remember that wisdom grants freedom of making the mistakes of the past. Um,
Yeah, and I would just add to all sides, stop ignoring the importance of rational argumentation and being rational as a general rule.
mhm. As Edward Kenway of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, when he was talking of the Creed,
Yeah.
if nothing is true, then why believe anything? And if everything is permitted, then why not chase every desire? It might, like he was talking of the Creed, it might be this idea is only the beginning of wisdom and not its final form.
hmm And this is a problem because what he just described there is what you might call nihilistic hedonism. Nihilism because if nothing is true, then why believe anything? And hedonism because there was a philosophy in the um,
Well,
late 1700s through the 1800s called hedonism, which basically said that the only true mechanism for meaning is pleasure. Therefore, nothing that is not pleasurable is meaningful, and the only thing that matters is subjective opinions of pleasure. I
that's
fundament I fundamentally disagree with this because number one, it's just irrational on the face of it,
yeah,
and number
that's a
two,
really stupid uh,
it,
belief
it,
structure.
because consequentially it would lead to absolute just self-involved, self-destructive bullshit.
Yeah.
I will say I believe it was David Hume who came up with a version of hedonism that made more sense to me, which is he said that pleasure was the only measure for meaning, but there was a hierarchy of pleasures, and abstract pleasures like pleasures of the intellect, pleasures of learning, pleasure of discovery, are more substantive and better than pleasures of the animal nature, which is things like eating and drinking and fucking and that sort of
Well, okay.
the lower base impulses of
Yeah,
human nature.
keep in mind that the character of Edward Kenway started, like in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, started out as a pirate.
Mm-hmm.
And
So he's probably going more of the lower, more animalistic base pleasures.
right,
As
but by the end, he changes and becomes a better man, essentially. And in the extra lore that talks of Edward Kenway, he becomes the co-leader of an assassin brotherhood in London of the time. So he ultimately becomes better by the end. You know.
well, that's good, but that doesn't change the fact that his starting philosophy was absolute abject bullshit.
Well, to be fair, in the story, he wanted to get a better. He became a pirate or privateer to get a better life for his wife, because at the time they were kind of uh, in poverty.
Right. And I can understand that. I'm just saying, as someone who is very particular about um philosophies being logical and straightforward, this is complete bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess we should talk a little bit about the Assassin's Creed movie
Yeah,
because I think we've kind of covered the games and stuff
we did.
and the overall like things. I think we might get into themes a little bit later, depending on time, obviously.
Thank you.
Bless
Thank you.
you. Yep. Okay, so what were your general thoughts on the Assassin's Creed movie? Oh,
It was mostly a missed opportunity.
yeah.
Um,
Um, and I think I remember sending you like a few deleted scenes and stuff.
yes,
I think those deleted scenes, if they were kept in, would have made the
would
movie a little
help
better.
the movie considerably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they deleted an entire character that I think would have helped make us sympathize with the protagonist.
yeah. That tends to happen a lot with deleted scenes. Either there's no point in cutting it, or it actually would have made the movie better with it in there.
Yeah. So,
I will say I don't like Mike Fassbender very much. I also think it was a mistake to flash in between the modern setting and the historical setting. I think what should have happened is they should have used the um the uh I forget the name of the technology they used.
Animus.
Thank you. They should have used the Animus um to use as kind of a framing device, and then had the entire rest of the movie been historical, and
Uh,
then at the very very end flash back to the present and have the character played by Mike Fassbender uh, decide that he's going to use what he learned to fight the Templars again, and
Callum
then cut
Lynch.
black. Sequel bag, perfect.
Yeah, Callum
Huh?
Lynch. Okay, so see, I kind of wish they had a more. They were even. They were more even because I feel like they did too much modern day and not enough history.
Right.
I feel like they should have even it out and had the stories be paralleled in a way. Because I feel
That's another way. That's another way you could have gone about it. I'm just saying that from the context of just that one movie, it would have benefited I also think it would have benefited to have some of that exposition worked into that beginning part, instead of interspersed throughout, and then had him hooked up to the Animus. Because then you could have done the entire rest of the movie in the past, and then when it cuts back, you could have set up that Mike Fassbender's character has been inspired to become an assassin in the modern day, and then when he does that, boom, sequel bag, and then you can have an entire next movie set in the modern era.
Again, like I just feel like they should have had a good. Personally, I think they should have had a good balance because I feel like, and also again, yeah, they didn't really do a lot. I could also I'm not gonna. I want to say I blame the studio, kind of.
Yeah.
Because they did put a block on. They did the whole 2 hour thing, you know.
Yeah.
On the movie, so that was like something I didn't like. That they cut out, you know. But I actually did enjoy the movie. I know there were problems with it. What was I? I'm sorry. I'm losing my train of thought here.
It's all right.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I guess kind of going into my idea is that, and I got this from these other videos that I will look up while I'm talking, but I'm basically doing a whole rewrite of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But just to be clear, I'm not saying I think I could do better than the movie because, again, I said I like the movie. I just know they faltered a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of reworking everything, like the plot, the MacGuffin, the settings, characters. Sorry, I'm just.
Don't you think though that the apple was probably a good MacGuffin for at least the first movie, and then they could have used the other MacGuffins for the sequels?
Okay, maybe it's just again like I feel like the apple has
'Cause
been the centerpiece of the games, and I realize that does make sense.
And also, just for the sake of the movie itself, them wanting to use the apple lets the audience in on what their plot is from the get-go. Because the
Right.
apple has one very specific use, whereas Excalibur is kind of ambiguous.
Well, actually, they do explain it again with within like the fandom wiki.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess the apple would make more sense because one, it is technically the centerpiece of the MacGuffins within the games.
Yeah.
Right. So I will. I'm posting the video link to Phil Mento's video, "Anatomy of a Failure: Assassin's Creed."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's posted now. But yeah, I just feel like my story works a little better with everything we've talked about with like the philosophy and stuff of Assassin's Creed. So the main character, like the protagonist, is, well, first off, the name is Liam Burke because I don't know, I thought it was a good name. But essentially at first I was thinking the idea is that he kind of shares the view of the Templars in a way. Because backstory wise, he lost his friend in a terrorist bombing a year prior to the movie. So he's kind of gotten the pessimism thing going on. So he feels like he feels like the Templars are offering a better world. So, and throughout the first movie, he kind of, and throughout like the experiencing his ancestors and stuff, his ancestor, that it made sense, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm just kind of, because the protagonist is kind of supposed to be the audience surrogate, because I feel like he has to be for
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For an origin movie, especially.
Yeah. So he's learning about this stuff, even though he didn't know like his bloodline and stuff, because I do have him being adopted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I have like these characters, because I wanted to keep the setting they had for modern day, where it's like Abstergo, the Templars are keeping them kind of locked in, like this place, like a prison. I don't know. It was cool. I feel like they didn't do much with it. Missed opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like these, I don't want to go into full detail with these characters because it might take too long.
Right.
But yeah, they're very much. I made them very interesting. Um, so because it's me and I'm big on characters and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, setting wise, I actually had it set in the. And I told you this, Don, that I said it during the Siege of Orleans, during the 100-Year War, which is actually a very interesting time period from what I had read and looked at.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the whole idea was them trying to hunt down a piece of Eden, and in this continuity, a piece of Eden is what's called because it's like an ancient piece of technology that from those who came before the Isu, which it's very interesting. But the plot essentially boils down to everyone trying to get the MacGuffin, which I guess is now the apple, because I think it makes more sense now that Dawn has explained to me. The major thing is though that the one who wants it, like the Templar, doesn't want it because of like its primary function. It's more of like it could be used as a way to um, like a renewable energy source.
Hmm.
Again, to kind of keep in line with that morally gray organizations.
Right.
So yeah, had rules and stuff. I guess we should kind of talk about the Animus, because I don't think they properly explained it within the movie.
Hmm.
And again, I want to kind of address this part is that everyone's not really into the whole sci-fi modern day storyline. And again, the first link I posted is the is the one you should check out to get a better explanation of that. But I do like how it kind of parallels, which revolves around a theme of. Wrote it down here somewhere. I um, thought I wrote it. Oh, okay. Now I found it. It's a long list I got here. First theme, which is from the game as well, legacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Obviously the theme is, but the theme of legacy, I think, works with like the heritage, which is obviously important for like how the Animus works and stuff, or
Yeah.
Templars and Assassins.
We might have to hurry this last bit up
Right, right.
because
I understand. But yeah, it's just how legacy shapes and changes people for better or worse. Do you have anything to add to that, Dalton?
I think the most interesting aspect of the Assassin's Creed universe is the way in which genetic potential is explored, and also the idea that genetics is almost a kind of reincarnation.
Hmm. Never looked at it that way, actually. This is what I have him on, folks. He is both funny and also because he knows a lot of different stuff, and he just adds so much to the conversation.
I do my best.
I did not have you on last week. That's my thing.
Because you assumed that the England team was gonna be doing a Thunderdome, and
I kind of assumed you were busy, so
and in all honesty, I also assumed that I was going to be on a Thunderdome, or I would have jumped on of my own accord. Um, because but as it happens, England team was busy last week, so
right. Okay, so second theme is choice over duty. By that I mean the characters have a choice to do what they think is right than what is told they must do.
rather than what they would rather than what they're told to do or what is given authority. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Personally, I generally agree with that, because the thing about this kind of the supposition based on authority, um, is that even way back when philosophy was first getting going and the types of argumentation were being cataloged, arguments arguments that involved appeals to authority were considered kind of a shortcut, because see, the famous philosopher Socrates hated democracy because he didn't think there was any way in the foreseeable future that people could be educated, and he didn't think that having an uneducated populace would lead to very good decisions, and therefore democracy was kind of stupid. I.e., you can leaving people in charge of things is good if they're educated and they know what to do, but if they're not educated or they don't know how to think for themselves, they're going to get taken in by stupid shit. So often, what would happen is you would have arguments from ethos or arguments from consensus or authority, um, as kind of a logical shortcut. I.e., if a person is too dumb, or you don't think they're going to understand the actual logic behind an argument or the emotion behind an argument, just give them an authority to appeal to. The problem is, of course, as we figured out later, appeal to authority is by and large a logical fallacy. And some philosophers try to draw a distinction between ethos and appeals to authority. I, however, do not. I find this to be incredibly cognitively dissonant and dishonest with ourselves. So I personally think that all appeals to authority should be thrown out, and that appeals to pathos and logos should be paid much more attention to. I.e., if you don't understand why you're doing something or why you believe something, then you should not be believing that thing. It is on you to understand yourself and the world around you well enough to make a rational argument or a reason for why you do / believe / argue for a thing.
right. What else? Yeah. So setting, I had it set during the. I actually had a hard time thinking of a place it would be set in. So yeah, I had it set in the 1400s, namely within the Hundred-Year War, more specifically the middle of the siege of Orleans.
By the way, I'm pretty sure it was called the 100 Years' War, not the 100-Year War.
Huh.
You said that a couple times, and it for some reason doesn't register right with me.
Well, I looked it up, and that's how it was said. But I mean, like, it could be the 100 Years' War.
I think it's just called the 100 Years' War. But I might be wrong.
Right.
Or it might be a case where it's acceptable either way. Who knows?
Hmm. Oh, right. I forgot one theme. Which is it's kind of I would say it's kind of a Disney theme, kind of, or like it's a standard theme that's used in a lot of stories. Unity.
Mm-hmm.
Unity. Again, this is kind of reflected with the journey of the protagonist, who at first is kind of the antagonist towards a lot of the side characters, but ultimately joins like the other assassins and stuff. And it's paralleled with the ancient group of assassins uh, by being like close friends and stuff. And
Yeah. Yep.
so,
Friendship and togetherness good. Divisiveness and selfishness bad, as we all know.
part of me wants to talk about the Animus and like the version they had in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I liked I liked the version they had because I think the filmmaker said they didn't want to have the comparison with the Matrix,
Right.
which is fine. Again, I like the version they had.
Yeah.
Kind of makes a lot more sense in a way because if a person is to develop the abilities of an assassin through the bleeding effect, which I thought was a really cool concept,
Yeah.
um, then yeah, they should be going through actual motions and exercises.
Yeah. They actually need to develop what's called kinesthetic intelligence, which is the intelligence of body and motion.
Right.
Um,
Oh, right. For people who don't know what the Animus is, which good for you for being this long with for this
yeah.
stream. Um,
If you know that little about Assassin's Creed.
play like the first early games. They're really good, and the whole series itself is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the Animus is a virtual reality machine that is designed to shift through the subject's genetic memories of their ancestors, showing what really happened in the past. Um, and yeah, in my version of Assassin's Creed, I am keeping the Animus rig from the movie. One, because I think it looks cool, and that's always a plus.
Yeah.
And again, like I agree with the
It,
original filmmakers not wanting to.
it makes a level of sense that the video game version doesn't, and it also makes it distinct from things like the Matrix.
Yeah. Also, this version of the Animus is full body immersion. Um, the design difference is that the rig itself is connected to major joints of the person, like like strap on things. I
Mm-hmm.
think of what it's called. But either way, and also like VR goggles, so it keeps the subject fully immersed within the simulation.
Mm-hmm.
I did write rules down, and I think they work a lot better because, again, like I don't think the Assassin's Creed movie did well with like visuals and stuff, but I don't think they had really fleshed out like the rules and stuff of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when a subject is linked to the Animus, they experience their ancestors' life, but it's not actually them. The subject is more of a passenger, but also the driver. They feel like they're their ancestors, going through the motions of their ancestors' movements, but are simply mimicking them. The subject feels like it's them doing these things, but it's not really them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what you said, Dalton. Because again, it makes a lot of sense on the fact that if you're just sitting in a chair, just kind of mentally feeling your muscles aren't actually getting the exercise
Yeah.
they need to do those things.
And also part of genetic memory would be things like muscle and kinesthetic memory, which is not typically housed, at least not entirely within the brain. So it doesn't it doesn't do well just to shift your mindset if you don't actually change your body anyway.
Yeah. Once the subject goes through animus sequences or a few sessions, they start to have what is called a bleeding effect, which I thought was always an interesting concept with the games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with like the visions and stuff. I really wish they would have gone more in depth with that. It
Yeah,
might have been
because
other
it's kind of like awakening something that was asleep all
ava-
along,
avatar state, kinda.
or just accessing what lied dormant in your subconscious.
Yeah. Which is essentially when the ancestor they are living as starts to affect them, either seeing them in visions or seeing visions in general. In many cases, the subject begins to copy and learn the movesets of their ancestors. After several sessions, the subject has the skills of their ancestors. It's like the second rule of the animus I wrote. This kind of involves synchronization because it's like in the games, you only achieve synchronization by doing other objectives for the game. It's like so they pad out time for playing.
Mm-hmm.
Synchronization is when a subject fully connects with the ancestor, becoming them completely within the simulation, which actually makes the bleeding effect more viable. However, when a subject resists the simulation, fighting for control of the memories, this causes desynchronization. Which, when I typed that word, desynchronization, it said it was wrong. So I thought that was an actual word.
No, it is. It's just a word rare enough that Google probably doesn't have it in the database.
Yeah. Which is when the subject refuses the animus system, causing the program to lose control, making all the ancestors and memories, both examining and others, to clash with the subject's memories, both sets of memories fighting for dominance.
Hmm.
I think that's kind of how it was with the desynchronization thing. I mean, with like the first game, they showed what was happening and stuff, like all that stuff is happening. Again, it's more like they have the animus set up just as a fact that it explains like the health bar and map and stuff,
Hmm.
which is fine. I just I like these again, like I've said, I like the set sci-fi element.
Mm-hmm. And I also like that it's very limited sci-fi. Like this isn't out of left field technology. This is at least tangentially plausible.
Yeah. Very few can access the animus due to them not having the specific genetic markers that allow the animus to run properly. Again, I think they explain this a little bit within the game's lore, probably again from the wiki. Essentially, our DNA, like present day people, DNA is kind of diluted enough to where you can actually like go back to like cavemen.
Hmm.
Because we have so many different mixtures of DNA that it's just kind of you can't act.
It's an incoherent stream of letters at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah. Um, and memory, because everyone always, I think this has been mentioned a few times, is that how can you properly access the memories you're looking for? Because in the game you have to go through these certain sequences of stuff so you can get to the memories you're looking for and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Memory is data for the animus. There's a copious amount of it, and that being said, with not having exact times and dates for events, one simply is placed in an approximated time, and their subjects go through memories. This data, this allows the data to be studied and get better at predicting the time of interest.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for everything I had for my plots and rules and settings and themes. But yeah, um, Assassin's Creed itself is a really interesting series of games, and it really could have been a really great movie series. I just think it's
Un-
because,
Unfortunately, it was botched because they didn't know what they had.
yeah. And if you want to see like kind of a more like what the movie could have been, I'm going to put a link to uh, a fan trailer that was made a few years ago that looks a lot better, I'd say, from like the actual trailers you saw of the movie. So yeah, as that. Yeah. So legitimately, I just think it had it has the potential for greatness. I just think you got to find the right people to do that kind of stuff.
Yep. I also think it's a good idea to wait until they work out the kinks of the video game genre first.
Hmm. But the weird thing
Because
is I thought this.
video games are still where comics were about 10 years ago. I honestly think that Detective Pikachu might be the video game equivalent of Iron Man, and I honestly think that Castlevania, the Netflix series, has the potential to become the equivalent of the Nolan Batman trilogy.
Ooh, nice.
So we may very shortly see the beginnings of the video game movie renaissance.
Also, I think they should wait at least like another maybe 10 years before they do a
Try
reboot.
again.
Yeah, do a reboot of Assassin's Creed. Hopefully, by that time, I will be director of that.
Wishful thinking.
I mean,
But you
I got an idea on what I want to do. So, but yeah, and it's just there have been pitches of ideas for Assassin's Creed movies. Like one, it's where it's just like you take out the animus and stuff, and it's like just the modern day and just flashbacks to where it's like the swashbuckling adventures.
so they would take out the genetic memory thing and basically just make it remembering a past life or reincarnation.
No, no, it's legitimately just flashbacks, and then you go to present day.
Oh, okay.
I don't like that version, just on the fact that
Yeah, no, I like the animus. It's an interesting part of the
yeah,
lore, so leave it.
yeah, and again, like they when I heard the Assassin's Creed movie was coming out, obviously I was skeptical, but when I saw the cast, when I saw like how it looked and stuff, it just I was sold. But when I saw it, at first I enjoyed it, but mulling it over, obviously the
Hmm.
problems were really there. Uh, a major thing I think is a problem is like if you're do an adaptation of Assassin's Creed into like a movie, I think more so it might be better to do a series, like a TV
Yeah.
series,
Yeah.
because I think it is difficult to get.
Can you imagine a Assassin's Creed series done by the people who do Deadly Class? That would be awesome.
Wasn't that made by the Russo brothers?
Deadly, I think one of them produced it.
Right. Um, I would prefer like maybe the stunt coordinators of Netflix's Daredevil,
Hmm.
because I think we mentioned once or twice like the action in the Assassin's Creed movie. It does look. It's not shaky cam, but it's like quick cutting,
Yeah.
so you don't really see everything.
The the thing that's really glorious about the Assassin's Creed games is it's all essentially what would be long takes of like these big parkour stunts.
Every season of an Assassin's Creed series would be about a different ancestor and stuff.
Yeah. Or you could even make it an anthology where every season is about a different person learning about a different ancestor.
That would be cool too.
And then you could bring them all together as like a team, and they could be a modern sort of revamping of the assassins. And then they'd go to war with the Templars, and then boom, big long
There actually has been a
war arc season.
there was a whole thing where it's like the ones who came before the Isu, where they were basically like not proto humans actually. They were very much more advanced than us.
Mm-hmm.
Funny thing is, they had like triple helix DNA, I believe is what it was mentioned. And they had like this sixth sense where essentially they could see, not see, but like, well, no, they could see like alternative timelines, like calculate um,
Mm-hmm.
the probable outcome. Like their
Right.
minds ran so fast,
Mm-hmm.
which I think was interesting, and it was set up in game, but again, they dropped it after Assassin's Creed 3, which is where the downfall really started to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of potential for Assassin's Creed.
Yep.
You just need to find the right people who can do it. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I think I might be one of them.
Well, I mean, know what you have to offer, I guess. So.
Yep. Okay, so I guess that's kind of last of our ranting slash talking slash debating slash whatever.
About Assassin's Creed for the evening.
Yeah. Okay, so some updates. We finally have the 3 videos we're going to talk about for tomorrow's podcast number 20.
Yep.
Hopefully we get some guests on. It's going to be me, Dalton, and Corrupt.
Yep.
As the hosts. And we're basically just going to do what we do with articles
and trailers, but with essentially what the critical intelligentsia of YouTube decides to throw at us.
And we say critics with very big air quotes.
Well, no, they are critics. It's just I wouldn't call them intelligentsia.
True. Okay.
Despite their many attempts at it.
Which is weird because I have seen some of their other videos and like they have potential and stuff. It's just
Yeah, no, I mean I used to like Movie Bob back before he got fired from Escapist and before he lost his mind a little bit in regards to Gamergate. I think between Gamergate and Trump, it kind of broke him internally.
Mhm.
And he's always had really weird views outside of his work, but it never really made it into his work until after
so
Gamergate and Trump and losing his job at the Escapist.
right. So well now they are aware that we will be covering a video by Movie Bob. We will keep the other 2 secrets for the time being.
Yep.
Hope to see you guys there.
Yep.
That's going to be a long one. I know that. That's going to be a long. I think that might be our longest. That's going to be our longest podcast. Maybe we might have to split it up into 2 parts.
We may well have to split it up into 2 parts, but fortunately, if we do split it up into 2 parts, that gives us the opportunity to cover the other 2 videos that we were
Well,
thinking about.
I was talking about the podcast in general.
Right.
Because I think of the videos.
Mm-hmm.
Last one's going to be a pain in the ass because that got me angry when watching it.
Uh-huh. And he used to give a lot of really good content as well, to be fair.
I'm aware of that. Okay, so folks, we are going to bid adieu because I'm sure Dalton might have to leave soon.
Yes, I will be over on Englenteen's channel doing comic book Thunderdome related things and judging of things, weighing and measuring of things, and finding wanting of things.
Wait, so Englanteen got his streaming privileges back?
Yes.
Cool.
A long time ago, a couple months ago, in fact, I think in April. Yeah, April.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, until tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, folks.
Yep. Cheers, guys.